In a world where the media was more powerful than ever, a storm of controversy brewed around one of America's most popular daytime talk shows, The View. It all started when Karoline Leavitt, a well-known political commentator and former guest on the show, decided to take legal action. She filed a massive lawsuit against The View for $800 million, claiming that the hosts had defamed her during a heated discussion on air. The incident quickly became the talk of the town, sparking debates on social media, news outlets, and even late-night television. At the center of the drama was Sunny Hostin, one of the co-hosts of The View. Known for her sharp tongue and bold opinions, Sunny had led the charge in criticizing Karoline during the controversial episode. Her comments were harsh and unrelenting, labeling Karoline as someone who didn't understand basic decency and calling her views dangerous. These remarks didn't just stay within the confines of the studio, they went viral. Clips of Sunny's fiery critique spread like wildfire across platforms like Twitter and TikTok, turning what might have been a minor disagreement into a full-blown cultural moment. Stephen Colbert, the witty host of The Late Show, couldn't resist jumping into the fray. With his signature blend of humor and sharp observation, he turned the unfolding chaos into comedic gold. Sitting behind his desk, Colbert leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "Well, folks," he began, addressing his audience, "it looks like Sunny Hostin has decided to trade her seat at the table for a starring role in a courtroom drama. I hear they're casting for the next season of Law & Order, Defamation Unit." The audience erupted in laughter, but Colbert wasn't done. Yet, he went on to mock Sunny's over-the-top delivery, imitating her tone and gestures with exaggerated flair. "Public enemy number one," he exclaimed, throwing up air quotes. "What is this, 1950s propaganda? Someone get her a cape and a villain monologue while we're at it." His joke struck a chord with viewers who loved the way he poked fun at the absurdity of the situation. Clips from his monologue soon made their way online, racking up millions of views and further fueling the public's fascination with the scandal. But not everyone found Colbert's antics amusing. Supporters of The View fired back, accusing him of taking cheap shots at Sunny and undermining serious discussions about free speech. Critics argued that Colbert's satire only added noise to an already chaotic narrative, distracting from the real issues at hand. Still, Colbert seemed unfazed by the backlash. If anything, it only encouraged him to push harder. "You know, you've made it when people are mad at your jokes," he quipped during another segment. "That means you're doing something right." Amid the whirlwind of memes, hot takes, and hashtags, a young journalist named Emma Carter found herself drawn to the story for reasons beyond the surface-level drama. Emma worked for a small independent news outlet that often covered underreported stories. While scrolling through the lawsuit documents late one night, she stumbled upon something peculiar. Buried deep within the fine print was a cryptic reference to a third-party entity involved in funding The View. At first glance it seemed innocuous, just a name buried among dozens of others, but something about it caught Emma's attention. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to dig deeper. After hours of research, Emma uncovered a connection between The View's parent company and Alex Monroe, a tech billionaire known for his aggressive business tactics. Monroe had recently acquired shares in several major media companies, including the network behind The View. Rumors swirled that he had used his influence to shape the show's editorial decisions, particularly those targeting individuals like Karoline Leavitt, whose policies posed a threat to his corporate empire. Emma knew she was onto something big, but she also realized she couldn't tackle this alone. She needed help, and there was only one person she trusted enough to bring into the fold: Ryan Dawson, a former producer of The View. Ryan had left the show months earlier under mysterious circumstances, citing creative differences as his reason for departure. Emma tracked him down to a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, where they met over cups of coffee. Ryan listened intently as Emma explained her findings, nodding along as she laid out her suspicions about Alex Monroe. When she finished, he sighed heavily, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You're not wrong," he admitted reluctantly. "There's more going on behind the scenes than anyone realizes. Executives would call meetings after every episode, pushing us to steer conversations in certain directions. Sometimes they'd even send us scripts with talking points we weren't allowed to deviate from. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. Scripts? For a live talk show? Ryan nodded grimly. Yeah, and if we didn't follow them, there were consequences. But here's the thing. Most of those directives came from outside sources. People we never met, working for companies we barely understood. He hesitated before continuing, glancing around the cafe as if worried someone might be listening. I can't give you names or specifics without putting myself at risk, but I will say this. Whatever you think you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Be careful, Emma. This goes deeper than you can imagine. The warning sent a chill down Emma's spine, but it also strengthened her resolve. She thanked Ryan for his honesty and promised to keep him updated on her progress. As she walked home that evening, her mind raced with possibilities. Who exactly was pulling the strings? And what did they stand to gain by Tarn-Twist-G Karoline Leavitt's reputation? Back in New York City, Stephen Colbert prepared for another episode of The Late Show. Unaware of Emma's investigation, he remained focused on delivering laughs and maybe a little truth to his audience. That night's monologue touched on everything from politics to pop culture, but the highlight came when he returned to the topic of The View. You know, he mused, leaning casually against his desk, if I didn't know any better, I'd say this whole thing feels orchestrated, like someone out there is playing chess while the rest of us are stuck playing checkers. His words resonated with viewers, many of whom shared his skepticism. Yet Colbert couldn't shake the feeling that he was treading dangerous ground. Anonymous messages began flooding his inbox, warning him to drop the subject before things escalated. Some were vague threats, others hinted at dire consequences. Despite the intimidation, Colbert refused to back down. Humor, he believed, was a weapon, one that could cut through fear and expose hypocrisy in ways traditional journalism sometimes couldn't. As the days passed, the story continued to evolve, drawing in new players and uncovering hidden layers of intrigue. For Emma, it was the beginning of a journey that would test her courage and determination. For Stephen Colbert, it was an opportunity to shine a light on the absurdities of modern media. And for everyone else watching from the sidelines, it was a reminder that truth, no matter how elusive, always demanded to be told. Little did they know, the events set in motion by Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit would ripple far beyond the confines of a single talk show. What started as a clash of personalities was fast becoming a battle for accountability, a fight that would challenge the very foundations of power and perception in a hyper-connected world. As the lawsuit against The View continued to dominate headlines, tensions behind the scenes reached a boiling point. The executives at the network were scrambling to contain the fallout, holding emergency meetings late into the night. They knew that the $800 million lawsuit filed by Karoline Leavitt wasn't just about defamation. It was a direct attack on the integrity of their brand. The public was watching closely, and every misstep could cost them dearly. One name kept surfacing. In these high-stakes discussions, Alex Monroe, a tech billionaire with a reputation for ruthless ambition, Monroe had recently acquired shares in several major media companies, including the one backing The View. While his involvement seemed like a routine business move at first glance, whispers began to circulate that Monroe might have played a role in shaping the show's editorial decisions. Some insiders claimed he had pressured producers to target individuals whose views clashed with his corporate interests. People like Karoline Leavitt, Emma Carter, the young journalist who had stumbled upon this potential connection, couldn't shake the feeling that she was onto something big. Her meeting with Ryan Dawson, the former producer of The View, had only deepened her suspicions. What Ryan had described, a shadowy web of directives and scripts coming from unnamed sources, sounded less like standard media practice and more like manipulation on an industrial scale. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma dove headfirst into her investigation. Her first step was to dig deeper into Alex Monroe's background. On paper, Monroe was a self-made success story, rising from humble beginnings to become one of the wealthiest men in America. But as Emma peeled back the layers, cracks began to show. Monroe's rise coincided with a series of controversial mergers and acquisitions, many of which involved companies accused of unethical practices. He had also invested heavily in social media platforms, leveraging algorithms to shape user behavior and maximize engagement. It didn't take long for Emma to realize that Monroe's influence extended far beyond traditional media. His fingerprints were all over the digital landscape, from news feeds to trending topics. She started piecing together patterns, noticing how certain stories gained traction while others disappeared without a trace. It was almost as if someone, or something, was controlling what the public saw and heard. To get closer to the truth, Emma needed access to someone on the inside. That's when she remembered Lisa Bennett, a whistleblower who had briefly made headlines years earlier for exposing unethical practices at a data analytics firm. Though Lisa had vanished from the public eye after her initial revelations, Emma managed to track her down through old contacts. After several attempts, Lisa finally agreed to meet, but only under strict conditions. No phones, no recording devices, and no questions about her current whereabouts. They met at a small diner tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Lisa arrived wearing oversized sunglasses and a hoodie, her face partially hidden. She slid into the booth across from Emma and glanced around nervously before speaking. "You shouldn't have come looking for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't safe." "I know it's risky," Emma replied, leaning forward earnestly. "But I think you're the only person who can help me understand what's really going on. If what I've uncovered is true, then this isn't just about The View or Karoline Leavitt. It's about something much bigger." Lisa hesitated, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but you need to promise me one thing. If I tell you what I know, you can't use my name, not ever." Emma agreed, and Lisa began sharing fragments of information that painted a chilling picture. According to her, Monroe was deeply involved with a secretive organization known as Project Echo. This group specialized in using advanced algorithms to manipulate public opinion, often working hand in hand with powerful corporations and political figures. Their goal was simple yet terrifying: control the narrative by controlling the flow of information. "They call it narrative engineering," Lisa explained, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "It's not just about spreading fake news or propaganda. It's about planting seeds in people's minds, steering conversations in specific directions without them even realizing it. Social media is their playground. Every like, share, and comment feeds into their system, helping them refine their tactics." Emma listened intently, her mind racing with implications. If Lisa was telling the truth, then Project Echo's reach was vast, and its impact potentially catastrophic. She pressed further, asking about any concrete evidence Lisa might have. Reluctantly, Lisa pulled out a flash drive from her pocket and slid it across the table. "Everything I've gathered is on here," she said. "Documents, emails, recordings. It's enough to blow the lid off this whole operation. But be careful, Emma. If they find out you have this..." She didn't finish her sentence, but Emma understood the unspoken warning. Before she could thank Lisa, chaos erupted outside the diner. A black SUV screeched to a halt near the entrance, and two men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the area. Lisa froze, panic flashing in her eyes. "They're here," she whispered urgently. "Go, now." Without hesitation, Emma grabbed the flash drive and bolted toward the back exit. Heart pounding, she slipped into the alleyway just as the men entered the diner. She didn't look back, knowing that stopping now could mean disaster. As she ran, her thoughts raced ahead. Who were those men? How had they found them so quickly? And most importantly, what would happen if they caught her? Meanwhile, Stephen Colbert remained blissfully unaware of the dangerous game unfolding beneath the surface. Back in New York, he continued to tackle the View Leavitt saga with his trademark humor. Each night he delivered biting monologues that lampooned everyone involved, from Sonny Hostin's dramatic flair to Alex Monroe's enigmatic presence. His jokes resonated with audiences, turning him into both a hero and a lightning rod for criticism. But Colbert's lighthearted approach masked a growing unease. Anonymous messages had been flooding his inbox, warning him to back off before things got messy. At first, he dismissed them as empty threats, assuming they came from overly sensitive viewers. But when one message included personal details about his family, he realized the situation was more serious than he'd thought. Colbert confided in his writing team, unsure of how to proceed. "I didn't sign up for espionage," he joked half-heartedly during a brainstorming session. "All I wanted to do was make fun of daytime TV drama. Now I'm getting death threats?" His head writer, Sarah, offered some perspective. "Look, Stephen, you've always said comedy is a way to hold people accountable. Maybe that's exactly what's happening here. Someone doesn't want you shining a light on this because they know you'll make it impossible to ignore." Words struck a chord. Colbert decided to keep pushing forward, albeit with caution. During his next show, he addressed the backlash directly, turning it into yet another comedic moment. "Apparently, making fun of billionaires comes with risks," he quipped. "Who knew? Next thing you know, Elon Musk will send me a cease and desist letter for calling his rockets overpriced fireworks." The audience roared with laughter, but Colbert couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a tightrope. For every joke he made, there was a chance it could provoke retaliation. Still, he reminded himself why he did what he did. Satire wasn't just entertainment. It was a tool for exposing hypocrisy and challenging power. And if anyone needed to be challenged right now, it was Alex Monroe. Unbeknownst to Colbert, his instincts aligned eerily well with Emma's investigation. Though their paths hadn't crossed yet, both were inching closer to the same truth, aka truth that threatened to upend everything they thought they knew about media, influence, and control. For Emma, the stakes were personal. Her pursuit of justice had put her life in danger, forcing her to rely on quick thinking and sheer determination. For Colbert, the stakes were professional. His commitment to satire risked alienating powerful figures, but abandoning his principles wasn't an option. As days turned into weeks, the story grew more complex, drawing in new players and revealing hidden connections. Behind closed doors, executives scrambled to protect their reputations. Out in the open, journalists and comedians alike grappled with the weight of their discoveries. And somewhere in the shadows, forces moved silently, ensuring that the truth stayed buried. For now. For Emma, the flash drive represented hope, a fragile thread leading to answers that could change everything. For Colbert, his jokes were armor, shielding him from fear, while shining a spotlight on corruption. Together, though separated by circumstance, they embodied the spirit of resistance. The belief that even in the darkest times, the search for truth could never truly be silenced. Emma Carter's heart raced as she darted through the narrow alleyways, clutching the flash drive tightly in her hand. The sound of distant footsteps echoed behind her, but she didn't dare look back. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and determination. She knew the information on that tiny piece of hardware could expose a conspiracy that reached far beyond anything she had imagined. But she also knew it made her a target. Reaching a crowded street, Emma ducked into a convenience store, hoping to blend in with the shoppers. She grabbed a random magazine from the rack and pretended to browse while keeping an eye on the entrance. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. When no suspicious figures appeared, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. Slipping the flash drive into her pocket, she decided her next move. Finding someone who could help her make sense of the data without putting them, or herself, in danger. That someone turned out to be Daniel Harper, a cybersecurity expert Emma had met at a journalism conference months earlier. Daniel wasn't flashy or famous. He worked quietly behind the scenes, helping independent reporters uncover stories that larger outlets ignored. More importantly, he had a reputation for being trustworthy and careful. Emma sent him a quick text, asking if they could meet urgently. Within minutes, he replied with a location, a quiet park bench near the river. By the time Emma arrived, Daniel was already there, sipping coffee from a thermos. He looked up as she approached, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern when he saw how shaken she was. "You okay?" he asked, standing up to greet her. "I'm fine," Emma lied, sitting down beside him. "But I need your help. It's complicated." Daniel raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he listened intently as Emma explained everything: the lawsuit against The View, her suspicions about Alex Monroe, the mysterious Project Echo, and her encounter with Lisa Bennett. When she handed him the flash drive, his demeanor changed. Gone was the casual friendliness. Now, he was all business. "This is serious," he said after examining the device. "If what you're saying is true, this isn't just some corporate scandal. We're talking about manipulation on a massive scale. Stuff that affects elections, public opinion, maybe even global policies." Emma nodded grimly. "I know. That's why I came to you. Can you crack it?" Daniel hesitated, weighing the risks. "I can try, but we'll need to be smart about this. Whoever's behind this won't hesitate to come after us if they think we're getting too close." Over the next few days, Daniel and Emma worked tirelessly, poring over the contents of the flash drive. What they found was staggering. The files included internal memos, encrypted emails, and detailed plans outlining Project Echo's operations. There were references to algorithms designed to amplify divisive content, strategies for targeting specific demographics, and even blueprints for upcoming updates meant to sway public sentiment during key events like elections. One document stood out above the rest, a proposal signed by Alex Monroe himself, approving a multi-million-dollar investment in Project Echo's latest initiative. Dubbed Operation Influence, the plan aimed to embed covert messaging into social media platforms, subtly guiding users toward predetermined conclusions. The goal was clear: to shape reality itself, one click at a time. As Emma read through the documents, a cold realization settled over her. This wasn't just about controlling narratives, it was about eroding trust in truth altogether. By flooding the digital landscape with conflicting information, Project Echo created confusion, leaving people unsure of what to believe, and in that chaos, those pulling the strings could operate freely, unchecked by accountability. "We have to get this out there," Emma said firmly, looking at Daniel. "People deserve to know what's happening." Daniel frowned, rubbing his temples. "It's not that simple. If we release this now, we risk tipping them off. They'll destroy the evidence, discredit us, or worse. We need proof we can't ignore, something undeniable." Emma understood his caution but couldn't shake the urgency gnawing at her. Every second they delayed gave Project Echo more time to implement their plans. Still, she agreed to wait, for now. Together they devised a strategy. Extract key pieces of evidence, verify their authenticity, and prepare to share them with the world in a way that couldn't be ignored. Meanwhile, Stephen Colbert remained blissfully unaware of Emma's discoveries, but not of the growing tension surrounding him. The anonymous threats had escalated, becoming more frequent and menacing. One message included a photo of his daughter walking home from school, accompanied by a single line of text. "Be careful who you mock." Another implied knowledge of his private family vacations, listing dates and locations with eerie accuracy. Colbert tried to brush it off, telling himself it was part of the job. Comedians often ruffled feathers, especially when they joked about powerful people. But deep down, he felt uneasy. For the first time in years, he questioned whether pushing boundaries was worth the risk, not just to himself, but to those he loved. His unease reached a breaking point during a live broadcast when he received another cryptic message mid-show. This one was different. It wasn't vague or threatening. Instead, it was a direct instruction. Stop talking about Monroe, or else. The timing was deliberate, designed to unnerve him while he was on air. Colbert froze for a split second before recovering, forcing a smile as he delivered his next joke. But the audience could tell something was off. After the show, Colbert confided in Sarah, his head writer. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this," he admitted, pacing his office. "Every time I mention Monroe, it feels like I'm poking a bear, and I don't want my family caught in the crossfire." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Stephen, you've always said comedy is a form of resistance. Maybe that's what this is, a test of how far you're willing to go. If you stop now, they win." Her words struck a chord, reminding Colbert of why he became a comedian in the first place. Yes, humor was entertainment, but it was also a weapon, a way to challenge authority and hold power accountable. Backing down would mean letting fear dictate his choices, and that wasn't something he was willing to do. The next evening, Colbert returned to the topic with renewed vigor. Sitting behind his desk, he addressed the camera with a mix of sarcasm and defiance. Well, folks, it seems I've struck a nerve with certain billionaires. Apparently making fun of them comes with consequences. Who knew? Next thing you know, Jeff Bezos will send me a drone strike for calling his space adventures a waste of rocket fuel. The audience laughed, but Colbert's tone shifted as he continued. Here's the thing, though. When you start threatening comedians for telling jokes, you're crossing a line. Free speech isn't just for politicians or pundits, it's for everyone. So to whoever's sending me these lovely notes, here's my response. Bring it on. Because the harder you try to silence me, the louder I'll get. His monologue went viral, sparking debates across social media. Some praised Colbert for standing his ground, while others accused him of grandstanding. But regardless of the criticism, one thing was clear. Colbert had thrown down the gauntlet, daring his opponents to take their best shot. Unbeknownst to him, his actions resonated deeply with Emma and Daniel. Watching the segment from a safe house where they'd set up temporary headquarters, Emma felt a surge of admiration and solidarity. Colbert's courage reminded her of her own mission, to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Turning to Daniel, she smiled faintly. Maybe we're not so different after all. Daniel nodded, though his expression remained serious. Let's hope we both survive long enough to see the endgame. As the days passed, the stakes grew higher for everyone involved. Emma and Daniel worked around the clock, piecing together irrefutable evidence of Project Echo's activities. Colbert kept pushing boundaries, using his platform to shine a light on corruption while deflecting threats with humor. And somewhere in the shadows, forces moved silently, preparing for a final confrontation. For Emma, the fight was personal, a chance to reclaim integrity in a world drowning in misinformation. For Colbert, it was professional, a reminder that laughter could be a powerful tool for change. Together, though separated by circumstance, they embodied the resilience of those who refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. Neither knew what lay ahead, but both were determined to see it through. The truth, they believed, was worth any price, even if it meant risking everything. The tension in the air was palpable as Emma Carter and Daniel Harper prepared for their most daring move yet. They had spent days analyzing the data on the flash drive, verifying its authenticity, and piecing together a narrative that would expose Project Echo's operations to the world. But releasing the information wasn't as simple as uploading it online or handing it over to a news outlet. They knew they were dealing with powerful people who wouldn't hesitate to bury the truth if given the chance. Their plan was risky but straightforward. Hack into a secure server used by one of Alex Monroe's companies and broadcast the evidence live to the public. It was a bold gamble, but they believed it was the only way to ensure the information couldn't be silenced or dismissed as fake. The stakes were high. If they succeeded, they could bring down an empire of manipulation. If they failed, they might not survive the consequences. Daniel worked tirelessly at his laptop, typing lines of code while Emma paced nervously behind him. "Are you sure this is going to work?" she asked for what felt like the 100th time. "It has to," Daniel replied without looking up. His voice was calm, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "We've got one shot at this. If we mess it up, they'll shut us down before we can try again." Emma nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. She glanced at the clock, on the wall. Midnight was approaching, the time they'd chosen for the broadcast. It was late enough that most people would be asleep, giving them a small window to act before anyone realized what was happening. But it also meant they'd need to rely on social media algorithms to spread the message quickly. Timing was everything. As the minutes ticked by, Daniel finished setting up the final pieces of the operation. He turned to Emma, his expression serious. "Ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," she said, forcing a smile. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out her phone, preparing to document the moment. At exactly midnight, Daniel hit the button. Streams of encrypted files flooded the server, bypassing firewalls and security protocols with precision. Within seconds, the data began broadcasting across multiple platforms: YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, and even major news websites. Screens around the world lit up with footage of internal memos, emails, and blueprints detailing Project Echo's plans. The voice of Alex Monroe himself could be heard in some recordings, approving strategies to manipulate public opinion during critical events. The reaction was immediate. Social media exploded with outrage as users shared clips and screenshots of the leaked documents. Hashtags like #Kanch Expose Echo and #Titus Truth Matters trended globally within minutes. Journalists scrambled to verify the authenticity of the files, while politicians called for investigations into Alex Monroe's activities. For the first time in years, the public saw the machinery of manipulation laid bare, and they didn't like what they saw. But the backlash wasn't limited to ordinary citizens. Powerful figures implicated in the scandal began fighting back, almost instantly. Lawyers representing Monroe issued statements calling the leaks a malicious fabrication designed to tarnish reputations. PR teams worked overtime to spin the narrative, claiming the documents were part of a smear campaign orchestrated by rival corporations. Meanwhile, anonymous bots flooded comment sections with disinformation, attempting to discredit the evidence and confuse the public. Despite these efforts, the truth continued to spread. Protesters gathered outside corporate headquarters demanding accountability. Employees of tech companies involved in Project Echo spoke out, revealing additional details about unethical practices. Even some hosts from The View distanced themselves publicly from Alex Monroe, citing concerns about editorial independence. Sonny Hostin, who had been at the center of the original controversy, issued a heartfelt apology during a live episode. "I want to say how sorry I am for my role in all of this and for not asking more questions when I should have," she said, her voice trembling. "What we're seeing now is bigger than any one person or show. It's about trust and right. Now that trust has been broken." Her words resonated with viewers, many of whom appreciated her honesty. Karoline Leavitt, the woman whose lawsuit had sparked the chain of events, released a statement dropping her legal case. "This isn't about money anymore," she wrote. "It's about dismantling the systems that allowed this to happen in the first place. Let's focus on holding those responsible accountable." Back in New York, Stephen Colbert watched the unfolding chaos with a mix of awe and unease. His jokes had helped keep the story alive, but he never imagined it would escalate to this level. As clips of the leaked documents played on his monitor, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Unbelievable," he muttered under his breath. Colbert's writers urged him to address the situation on his show, knowing it would resonate with his audience. But Colbert hesitated. He had already faced threats for mocking Alex Monroe. Taking a stand now could make him a prime target. Still, he couldn't ignore the significance of what was happening. Turning to Sarah, his head writer, he asked, "What do you think? Should I go for it?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. This is your moment, Stephen. You've been poking fun at the absurdity of power for years. Now's the time to remind everyone why that matters." Colbert nodded, a familiar spark returning to his eyes. That night he opened his monologue with a rare display of seriousness. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, leaning forward on his desk, "what we're witnessing right now is nothing short of extraordinary. A group of brave individuals has exposed a conspiracy so vast, so insidious that it makes every joke I've ever made seem tame by comparison." The audience fell silent, sensing the gravity of his tone. Colbert continued, his voice steady but impassioned. "For years we've laughed at the absurdities of modern life, the endless scandals, the ridiculous headlines, the sheer audacity of those in charge. But tonight, we're reminded of something important. Laughter isn't just entertainment. It's a weapon, and sometimes it's the only weapon we have against those who seek to control us." He paused, letting his words sink in before breaking into a wry grin. "Of course, none of this excuses me from making fun of Alex Monroe, because let's face it, he deserves it. The audience erupted in applause, cheering as Colbert launched into a blistering critique of Monroe and his associates. He mocked their attempts to deny responsibility, pointing out the glaring inconsistencies in their defenses. By the end of the segment, millions of viewers had tuned in, sharing clips of his performance online. Once again, Colbert had turned satire into a rallying cry, reminding people of the importance of questioning authority, even when it came at great personal risk. Behind the scenes, however, the danger remained very real. Emma and Daniel knew their victory was fragile. While the public outcry provided temporary protection, they were still fugitives in the eyes of those who wanted the truth buried. Anonymous messages continued flooding Colbert's inbox, each one more menacing than the last. Agents arrived at Daniel's apartment hours after the broadcast, searching for any trace of the hackers. Fortunately, Emma and Daniel had already relocated to a safe house, leaving little behind to connect them to the leak. As the days passed, society found itself grappling with the implications of the scandal. Trust in traditional media plummeted. While independent journalists gained newfound credibility, people started questioning everything, from the news they consumed to the ads they clicked on. Conversations shifted away from divisive topics fueled by algorithms and toward meaningful discussions about ethics, accountability, and transparency. For Emma, the experience was both exhilarating and exhausting. She had dreamed of exposing corruption, but she hadn't anticipated the toll it would take on her personally. Late one night, sitting alone in the safe house, she reflected on everything that had happened. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked Daniel, who was tinkering with his laptop nearby. "Only time will tell," he replied thoughtfully. "But I know one thing. We gave people a chance to see the truth. What they do with it is up to them." Emma nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope despite the uncertainty ahead. Across the country, Stephen Colbert echoed similar sentiments during another episode of The Late Show. "They can silence voices, but they can't silence ideas," he told his audience. "And sometimes all it takes is one person willing to ask the right question or crack the right joke to change the world." Though the battle was far from over, the fight for truth had begun. For Emma, Daniel, and Colbert, it was proof that even in the darkest times, courage and determination could shine a light where shadows once reigned. The aftermath of the Project Echo scandal unfolded like a storm that refused to settle. The world had been shaken awake, forced to confront uncomfortable truths about how easily information could be manipulated and trust eroded. For Emma Carter and Daniel Harper, the days following their daring broadcast were a blur of hiding, planning, and waiting. They knew the initial shock of the leak would fade, replaced by attempts to discredit the evidence and silence those responsible for exposing it. Emma often found herself staring at the flash drive they'd used to spark the revolution, now tucked safely inside an old shoebox under her bed in the safe house. It was hard to believe something so small had caused such chaos. She thought about Lisa Bennett, whose bravery had made all of this possible, and wondered if she was safe, or even alive. There had been no word from Lisa since their meeting at the diner, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her name might appear in another headline someday, though not in the way anyone would want. Daniel, meanwhile, spent hours monitoring online forums and encrypted channels, tracking reactions to the leak. He noticed patterns emerging, some encouraging, others deeply troubling. On one hand, grassroots movements were forming, demanding reforms in media regulation and transparency. On the other, shadowy figures were working overtime to muddy the waters, spreading conspiracy theories designed to cast doubt on the authenticity of the documents. "They're trying to confuse people," Daniel told Emma during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "If they can make enough people question what's real, they win." Emma sighed, leaning back against the wall. "So what do we do? Keep fighting?" "We don't have a choice," Daniel replied firmly. "If we stop now, everything we've done will be for nothing. We have to keep pushing until change happens, even if it takes years." Their resolve hardened as reports trickled in about investigations being launched into Alex Monroe and Project Echo. Lawmakers called for hearings. Journalists dug deeper. and whistleblowers came forward with additional stories of unethical practices within tech companies. Yet progress was slow, bogged down by legal battles and corporate lobbying efforts. Every step forward felt like 3 steps back, but Emma reminded herself that revolutions weren't built overnight. Stephen Colbert watched the unfolding drama from his perch on late-night television, using his platform to keep the conversation alive. His monologues became a mix of humor and commentary, poking fun at the absurdities while reminding viewers of the stakes. "You know," he quipped one evening, "if I had $1 for every time someone accused me of faking news, I'd probably own my own algorithm by now." But beneath the jokes there was a seriousness to his tone that hadn't been there before. Colbert understood better than most how fragile public attention could be. One day, the scandal dominated headlines. The next, it risked being overshadowed by celebrity gossip or viral cat videos. He saw it as his job to keep the pressure on, holding up a mirror to society and forcing people to look at the ugly truths reflected back at them. His efforts paid off when protests erupted outside major tech campuses, drawing thousands of demonstrators demanding accountability. Employees from several companies walked out in solidarity, accusing leadership of prioritizing profits over ethics. Social media platforms faced boycotts, and advertisers began pulling funding from outlets linked to Project Echo. Slowly but surely, cracks appeared in the walls of power that had seemed impenetrable just weeks earlier. For Alex Monroe, the backlash was devastating. Once celebrated as a visionary entrepreneur, he now found himself vilified as a symbol of corporate greed and manipulation. Interviews he had given in the past were dissected for hidden meanings, and photos of his lavish lifestyle circulated alongside memes mocking his downfall. Legal teams worked around the clock to shield him from criminal charges, but the damage to his reputation was irreparable. In a rare public statement, Monroe denied wrongdoing, claiming he had been misled by advisors who acted without his knowledge. Few believed him. Sunny Hostin, too, experienced a transformation. Her apology had resonated with viewers, earning her praise for humility and self-awareness. She became an advocate for greater transparency in media, urging colleagues to push back against editorial pressures. "We owe it to our audience to tell the truth, not just the version someone wants us to tell," she said during a panel discussion. Her words struck a chord, inspiring others in the industry to speak out about the challenges they faced. Karoline Leavitt, whose lawsuit had ignited the chain of events, chose to step away from the spotlight. Dropping her legal case didn't mean she stopped fighting. Instead, she focused her energy on advocating for policies aimed at regulating social media algorithms and protecting free speech. "This isn't about revenge," she told reporters. "It's about ensuring no one else has to go through what I did, and preventing systems like Project Echo from ever taking root again." As weeks turned into months, the story began to shift from outrage to reflection. Conversations about media literacy, digital ethics, and the role of technology in shaping society gained momentum. Schools introduced lessons on identifying misinformation, and nonprofits launched campaigns to promote critical thinking skills. People started questioning where their news came from and why certain stories dominated their feeds while others disappeared entirely. For Emma and Daniel, life settled into a new rhythm. Though still cautious, they allowed themselves moments of hope. Emma returned to writing, penning articles that highlighted the importance of investigative journalism in holding power accountable. Daniel continued working behind the scenes, helping others secure their data and protect themselves from surveillance. Together, they remained vigilant, knowing that while Project Echo had been exposed, similar threats would always loom in the shadows. Stephen Colbert ended each episode of The Late Show with a reminder that the fight for truth wasn't over. "Remember," he said during one particularly poignant closing segment, "laughing at the absurdity of the world doesn't mean we're giving up. It means we're refusing to let it break us. And sometimes that laugh is the first step toward changing things for the better." In the end, the battle against Project Echo wasn't won by a single hero or defining moment. It was a collective effort, a tapestry woven from acts of courage, curiosity, and resilience. Emma's investigation, Daniel's technical expertise, Colbert's satire, and countless unnamed voices coming together created a movement that transcended individual contributions. While the road ahead remained uncertain, one thing was clear. The pursuit of truth had awakened something powerful, a belief that even in the face of overwhelming odds, people could rise up and demand accountability. And so, the story didn't truly end. It evolved, carrying forward the lessons learned and the hope ignited by those who dared to challenge the status quo. For Emma, Daniel, Stephen, and everyone else touched by the scandal, it was proof that truth, though often elusive, always demanded to be told, and that telling it was worth every risk.